Hey, Grandma.
Hi.
I just wanted to let you know that I'm on my way, okay?
Okay.
All right, I'll see you when I get there.
Okay.
All right, bye. For the last few months, I've been researching my family's genealogy. So, here I am, back in the city I grew up in, Philly. Let's see what happens.
I was so interested in the Human Genome Project. People would send me stuff all the time, all my friends. And so at one point I got a magazine, this is in the 90s, that said if they're starting to look at the human genome to see that they can trace your ancestry. And I started thinking then, I bet there are people walking around this world who have no idea what their ancestries are. They're saying they're one thing, but they're something else. We are 99.9% the same.
DNA Discussion Project is a project that started in 2006 by Anita Foman. She, at that time, had a sample of, I believe, 4 people who were able to take their DNA. It was all about, let's just figure out where we can go with this. How do people identify based on their DNA?
Dr. Anita Foman and Dr. Bessie Lawden are the directors of the DNA Discussion Project. They've agreed to help me, like they've done countless others, understand family history and ethnic heritage through the use of DNA.
Identity negotiation, racial identification, is a process that involves many, many factors, right? DNA information is just one of them. I would argue that the most salient factors involving racial negotiation and identity negotiation are one's lived experiences, one's family narratives, social ascription, what society ascribes to you, where you grew up, the language you speak. All of these cultural factors shape how you identify. And those are, by far, based on our research, more salient to people than a piece of paper that tells them you are this percent white, this percent African, this percent Asian.
So growing up, we never really talked much about my family. I would hear stories about how my grandparents grew up, but that's about it. And I honestly never completely thought to ask. So I decided to take 2 DNA tests, one being Ancestry DNA, the other being African Ancestry DNA. I've always been curious to know where my ancestors came from, and I thought that was the best way to figure it out. What do you know about your father's side of the family?
Well, I know he had 2 sisters. No, it was 3 sisters. And I heard he had a brother too. I never saw the brother.
And do you remember the name of your grandparents?
Walter Potter.
Mm-hmm.
That was my daddy's father.
Oh,
now
Zula, I've seen a picture of her before.
He went on down.
Mm-hmm.
And all these was this was his sister. You see that picture up there?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of his sisters, Christiana.
So interesting. What do you know about your family's history? Do you know where you guys come from?
Well, I heard my father and his father and mother, I think they were Indians. Here is daddy's, see, this was their father.
Mm-hmm.
And these are his kids, Zula, Christiana, Agnes, Lily, and Jesse Potter. That was my father.
Okay, so this makes sense now, because when I was as I've been trying to put together my family tree, I've seen a Zula, but sometimes I see Zulas referred to as Julia, and I think that's just something that was messed up with the census, probably. Mm-hmm. I've seen Christina, Agnes, Lily. I just didn't know if they were actually really related to us, so they actually are.
One of the things that when Bessie and I go together, will ask is, how many of you think you have secrets or gaps in your family? And when we've done it anonymously, like 85, 90% of people will say, and when we've done it like non-anonymously on a survey, it comes like 60, 70%. Either way, it's a lot of people with a lot of secrets. And so it's not surprising when you figure most people think there's some gaps in their background, that you're going to find somebody who's really got a gap in their background.
So my results from Ancestry DNA are back. I have 33% Cameroon, Congo, and Western Bantu peoples, 17% Nigeria, 15% Benin and Togo, 10% Mali, 8% Ivory Coast and Ghana, 7% Northwestern Europe. From there, everything else is basically the 3 and 1% range.
And African Americans will have like 20% European ancestry. It has to do with the slave trade. And so anybody could have come in from anywhere, in your background. You've got those small percentages, but some people had larger. And it just depended upon how exposed that family, if it came from the, from slavery, how exposed people were to that rape and, being taken advantage of in that way.
The one thing that was surprising I think to me, like I already knew, I was like, okay, I'm going to have European in my DNA. There's no way around it. Most African American people do. There's no way around that. So I knew that when I saw my mom's results and then my sisters and things like that, I'm like, okay, I'll find Northwestern Europe, like what they have, and maybe one other thing. I kind of knew I was going to find Scotland just from research I did. And I'm like, all right, that's all it's going to be. But then when I'm like, okay, more Europe, I was like,
What surprised you? Tell me about that.
It kind of made me think back to, obviously, my oldest ancestors were more than likely slaves. You come to terms with the fact that there was a lot of rape that happened and kids came out of that, and you just really think about the times. Like, I know we know that happened and we know that's going to be part of history, but I think when we hear about it or we see it in movies, it's like, okay, we know that happened, but we're able to separate ourselves from it in a sense. So now when you're researching and you're looking, you're trying to figure out, okay, what was this ancestor? And then you're seeing them marked on censuses that they were mulatto or things like that. You're like, okay, something happened. And you just think about it as you think about them and who they were as people. So it's like, I kind of feel for them with.
And also, you start to understand trauma. I mean, slavery wasn't that far ago, and the rape, et cetera, and the things that came after it, Jim Crow, that when you look at your family and see like some great-grandparent who's depressed all the time or angry or hostile or violent, and same thing with men in your family, like they are connected to that trauma, and that trauma is what you're seeing in your DNA. And these same people who are rapists, et cetera, they're your ancestors too. So it's a very strange, coming to terms with.
So what I've been learning is that my DNA tells a story. It's basically telling where I've been, what my ancestors have been through, and now I'm just ready to learn more.